So in this video, I asked the question, did the universe create itself? And I finally get around to offering positive evidence for God. And the evidence in this video focuses on what's called the contingent nature of the universe. Contingency simply means that the universe could have existed or it could not have existed. The argument originally is, or historically, is referred to as the cosmological argument, and it was formulated by the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Now, two forms of the argument are still advocated and defended. The one, formulated by Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century, is defended very effectively, I think, by Ed Feser, the Catholic philosopher in California. And the other version of the argument, William Lane Craig defends, who is a Christian philosopher, and that argument is referred to as the Kalam cosmological argument and was formulated originally by an Islamic medieval philosopher. Now, the cosmological argument does not argue for a God who was physically required to trigger the Big Bang. God isn't just the first physical force that caused the Big Bang to happen. The argument instead is for a metaphysical, not a physical force or cause. And it's based upon the philosophical principle articulated by Parmenides, another Greek philosopher, ex nihilo nihil fit, which means out of nothing comes into being nothing. The cosmological argument assumed originally by Aristotle and by Aquinas that the universe is eternal. So the Big Bang is new evidence, you might say, for the cosmological arguments, or at least to be considered in relation to the cosmological argument. A very recent finding, of course, from science. The physicist and atheist Sean Carroll disputes that the Big Bang points toward a beginning to the universe. And I just want to point out again that initially the Aristotelian and the Aquinas version of the argument did not depend upon there being a beginning to the universe. So even if you don't think there was a beginning, you still have to address the cosmological argument. But instead, only the Kalam version of the argument depends upon a beginning. And even William Lane Craig, who does think, as a non-physicist I should say, that there was a beginning to the universe, or physics points toward a beginning to the universe, in agreement, of course, with other physicists, or with physicists. But even William Lane Craig doesn't depend alone upon the physics. He believes that the universe had to have a beginning for philosophical reasons. The universe could simply not be infinite or eternal. Now, the alternative to this view would be what is called the brute fact view of the universe. I think Sean Carroll more or less is an advocate for this view. And a brute fact simply means the universe is here and there is no explanation for why there is a universe here. It's obviously a non-explanation. And I don't see exactly myself how this is any different from simply saying it's magic, it's just here. And I think that's something I'd like to hear from people about. It's fine if you want to reject the Aristotelian argument, the cosmological argument, but if you're going to do so, at least take the time to understand the real argument. Don't rely on Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, which is a pretty big misunderstanding of the original argument. At least try to dig in and find out what the argument really claims and what it's based upon, what its premises really mean, before you reject its conclusion. I'd highly recommend the Catholic philosopher Copleston and his conversation with Bertrand Russell, the famous atheist. Their discussion, which we'll put in the related resources, is a much more interesting discussion, and it's actually about the real argument. If you disagree with any of this, or if you have a problem with anything I've said, I'd love to hear from you, and let me hear what you think in the comments section.